gun, still having ammunition that penetrates any kind of military-grade body armor without any problems.
When terrorism's the disease, Spetsnaz sharpshooters are the cure. They would be tested to their absolute limits in September 2004, when terrorists from a Chechen separatist group took over 1,200 hostages prisoner at a school in Beslan. Herding their victims into a gym, they showed no mercy.
These terrorists went off on an animalistic feral rage, the likes of which no one inside that gym had ever seen. And the vast majority of them were women and children. One father tried to calm everybody, and they walked up and blew his brains out with an AK-47. They told the hostages, "Let this be a lesson to you. No one's going to save you."
The terrorists rigged the gym with high explosives in anticipation of an attack from Spetsnaz. The siege reached a deadly stalemate, and for over 2 days, Beslan School Gym became a living hell. The terrorists had shot many of the older hostages. Spetsnaz were called in as the negotiators struggled for a deal. An attack was imminent.
The Russians had gotten the terrorists to allow them to drive a truck in through the gates into that western yard and retrieve the bodies. At 1:05, just as they were picking up the first body, everybody heard a large explosion.
The explosion signaled the start of a ferocious gun battle.
And the terrorists had had days to fortify this. They had 2 belt-fed machine guns, tripwires, booby traps everywhere. The Special Forces units, once they gained entry into the school, they were being decimated.
All 3 commanders of the Spetsnaz assault group would soon lie dead as casualties mounted. Some of the hostages tried to escape in the turmoil, under covering fire from Spetsnaz's sharpshooting snipers.
They started engaging right away, trying to keep the terrorists out of the windows, trying to give the hostages a chance to get across the yards to safety.
One innocent victim's plight would be photographed during this ferocious battle. 7-year-old Aida Sidakova would soon present Spetsnaz with a heartbreaking moral dilemma.
They thought this little girl was dead. And after a while, this child began to stir. And she stood up, and she was standing along the side of the wall. The Russian snipers were terrified. If this child took one step, that she was going to be shot down. And one young Russian sniper was screaming into his headset, begging for permission to shoot this child in the leg, hoping that he could drop her and at least save her life. He's got to make a decision to deliver a bullet across a yard that he knows is going to completely shatter a little girl's leg, because he realizes it's the only way to keep her alive.
But chaos and confusion would reign. The decision was soon taken away from the sniper.
And as with everything from the Russian command during the Beslan battle, that permission came too late. This little girl, with one last look around her tortured mind, knowing nothing else than to seek the comfort of her fellow hostages, climbed through the window back into the gym. And within a couple minutes of that, the rest of the ceiling had collapsed and the gym was engulfed in flames.
Miraculously, Aida would survive the fire, and over 850 civilians would escape with their lives. But 334 people, including over 186 children, were killed. It was a no-win situation for Russia's elite.
Hostages are going to die, and all the men of these units can do is try to keep as many of them alive as possible. And sadly, it becomes a numbers game.
Russia Spetsnaz, hard as steel, honed for the kill. Their most deadly weapon in an arsenal designed to eradicate the enemy? The Spetsnaz warrior himself. They are men of steel, forged from the most brutal training program in the world.
They go through a brutal selection process that would never be tolerated in the United States. It would be seen as too grossly inhuman. They lose so many of their own in training because they are pushed to such extreme levels.
После подготовки, вот специальной подготовки, любой спецназовец, любой боец, в принципе, может, для него безразлично, есть у него оружие или нет. То есть он как бы сам является оружием.
At the core of all training was physical exercise and immersion into a world of pain.
They can take more punishment and more pain than you can possibly dish out. And with that, it's amazing to watch them undergo just the brutality of their training.
You have to have absolute comfort with pain, and it is a tool the Russians take into battle with because their training is so tough, it is so brutal, and there are no pads, and there are no mouthpieces.
Each Spetsnaz trainee is taken to hell and back using techniques designed to break a man down and prepare him mentally for the horrors of war.
A lot of people say, you know, in combat, under stress, I'm going to rise up to the occasion. You never do. You fall down to the lowest level of your training. And if you haven't been pushed to the level where you hit the bottom in training, it's overwhelming panic. And if you have been trained that way, not to say that you're still going to survive and win, but you're going to make training-based decisions when, so to speak, there's nowhere else to go but up.
Both the body and the mind are pushed to the absolute limits.
There were training segments where you would be brought in for, I guess, what you can describe as a questioning. In front of a number of nurses, you were stripped naked. And we were pushed to the limits where morally and in some other ways, most people would just either break down or start fighting. Part of that training was to see your ability to remain the equilibrium, the balance, the stability, to still make rational decisions instead of giving in to emotional responses based on anger and fear.
The cornerstone of all Spetsnaz training has been a baptism into the brutality of close-quarters combat. One weapon that Spetsnaz really dig is their Sapurka shovel.
Что можно ей делать? Только копать, да. Но с другой стороны, здесь очень много функций у этой лопаты. Ей можно просто использовать как нож. Ее можно использовать как метательное оружие. Кроме того, данная лопата имеет рычаги. Этими рычагами можно управлять противником, то есть использовать его в качестве щита для защиты от ножа или от пули. И учитывая толщину стали, в принципе, если дать касательную, то можно и увести, так сказать, пулю от прямого попадания.
The shovel, compared to a knife, has much greater weight to it. Makes it a much more effective throwing weapon. It's going to do damage wherever it hits, and ideally, it'll hit a vital area of the body. So certainly you can see from the shovels in the wood here, and this is very hard wood, the depth at which these have gone into that. So that's clearly something that would cut the flesh easily. It would cut through bone, break bones, destroy whatever it's going to hit.
Even if this deadly tool is taken off a Spetsnaz warrior, hand-to-hand combat with his enemy is still within this warrior's comfort zone.
They realize that hand-to-hand combat is brutal, and it is ugly, and it is fast. And you've got to be able to bring to bear the best of the brutal and ugly techniques and skills that you have, or you're going to die.
At the heart of Russian hand-to-hand combat are three main fighting systems. First up, Rukopashny boy. Designed to destroy a man in combat, it is about hard, aggressive strikes and blows, where the fighter stays mostly on his feet.